Hello and welcome, fellow teachers. My name is Esther and I'm with English Gang. In today's presentation, I'm going to talk a bit more about the TPR method and ways to use it in your online classroom. So, today's lesson we will focus on the Cougars module. And to start off with, what is TPR? Well, TPR, or Total Physical Response, is a language teaching method based on coordination of language and physical movement. So this is a great strategy to use in your classes to engage the students, to make them feel welcome, and to also keep their concentration, especially if they are young learners. So my 5 TPR gestures that I use most in my classes. Number 1, always wave or greet with excitement. A good way is to make use of your whole screen and try to always have a big smile on your face, use your hands, or even fake a little handshake. Those are always fun. Number 2, cup your ears if you want your student to respond. It's very important to allow your student to speak as much as possible and to wait for a response. I think as teachers, we sometimes speak too fast or not give enough time. So try to incorporate this method and you'll see a lot more participation in your lessons. Number 3, pinch your forehead. This might seem like a strange gesture to use, but this is a good way to encourage student involvement and to draw as much information from them as you can. So I like to use this especially after introduction, and then ask the student what a certain word means. This allows them to use the vocabulary that they've learned so far and for you to see if they are on the right track. Number 4, count words with fingers. This is a good trick I learned from my TEFL course, and this works really well, especially if you want to focus on a specific word. Point to the finger, and then also remember to point at your mouth for them to repeat a certain word if they mispronounced it. And then number 5 is always give positive reinforcement. High fives, shooting stars, sunglasses, whatever makes your student feel alive and interested in what they're busy learning. So I hope this helped you. And let's get started with the Cougars module. So if this is your first time seeing our material, I hope you really enjoy it. It's very colorful and I really enjoy using it in my lessons. So when I start, I always say, today we're going to do lesson number 1. We're going to talk about the simple present tense, and then we also have a theme. Our theme for today is daily activities at home. And then at this part of the lesson, you can just see what their background knowledge is. What do you think is daily activities? What do you do at your house every day? Things like that or questions can spark interest and start the conversation. So before we start, we always go through our lesson goals. These goals keep the learners on track and motivated to know what we're aiming for in a specific lesson. So at times I would read part of it, or depending on the student's needs, if they are a strong learner, a strong reader, I would suggest that they read it and make sure that they understand all the words used in the goals. Next up are our warm-up words. These are verbs used throughout the lesson. And it's very important that they pronounce these words clearly and also understand the meaning of them, as they will use it throughout the lesson. So what I usually do, I would highlight the word, point to my mouth, eat, cup ears, and then wait for them to respond and repeat after you. So usually I would go through all the words and let them repeat after me, and then let them repeat it one more time by themselves. And then if there's a specific word that you think might be unclear or uncommon, it's good to just go back to it and say, student, what do you think cook might mean? And then let them try and make a sentence out of it. Usually they are very good at that. This is the most crucial page in the whole lesson, I would say. This is a good chance to really just make sure that your student understands the grammar rule. And what I would do in this specific lesson, I would focus on the pronoun and just let them repeat after me. If the subject is singular or in the third person, he, she, it, we will add a S and then let them repeat through the examples. Then the next part, I would say for plural subjects and pronoun subjects, I, you, we, they, let them repeat. We don't add a S onto the verb and let them repeat. So it's also very fun to familiarize them with the characters in our lessons. You'll see there's a lot of different pictures and sometimes also brain boosters that will come up later. And this just gives them extra information about what we're discussing. Now let's practice. At this part of the lesson, we use the pronouns and ask them to connect it with each sentence. If a student answers incorrectly, what I like to do is I like to go back. So for example, it eat apples. It eat apples. So point to the word and then ask them to think if that is the correct answer. Usually using this method, it helps the student to keep their confidence and to come up with the correct solution to their problem. So that's a nice strategy to use. The next part of our lesson is the booster time. Now, the brain boosters are all these lovely fruits and vegetables, and we use it throughout English Gang's material. So students usually like them very a lot. So the next part of the lesson will have two verbs. The student has to read the sentence and then also choose which one to use. At this part of the lesson, I like to draw out information from the picture. So for example, John eats bread and jam for breakfast. What do you eat for breakfast? And then let them participate and share from their daily lives. So we would go through them. For each correct answer, they'll get a brain booster, and always make a fuss, give positive reinforcement, high fives, and just enjoy the lesson with the child or adult. What we like to accomplish in these types of slides, we give them a certain sentence. So for example, he drives a car. Notice the verb is underlined and ask them to change it, starting with the subject you. So you, a car, and then of course you get a brain booster after answering it correctly. The other part of these slides are giving an option between two different sentences and them choosing which is the correct one. Very important here, let them read both sentences. The reason why we suggest you do this is because it's very important to train your students' ear for them to hear if something doesn't sound right, and this will ultimately make them better English speakers and readers. Then we'll have the dialogue practice, which is excellent to practice pronunciation, tone of voice, and just to make sure that they also pronounce it clearly and work on their reading skills. So what we would do here, I would read first, let them listen and repeat after me. Do the same with the second script, and then we'll swap and have a conversation. Also, just make sure that they focus on the underlined verb and to pay attention to the subject-verb agreement. So at this part of the lesson, I would also ask them questions, same as in the previous one. So for example, what does your father do after work? And then let her or him share about his or her family. The final part of the lesson is a conversation practice, which is very fun because here you really get to know your students' interests, likes, and even daily lives. So again, just pay attention to the subject-verb agreement and make sure that your student responds in the correct tense. Sometimes they like to move the conversation into a past tense or a continuous tense, and just focus their attention back to using the simple present tense in this case. So again, just share, draw out information. You can even ask them about their interests, favorite movies, anything like that. And this is a very nice part of the lesson to also just have a conversation and get to know your student. So yes, that's our tips and tricks for using TPR gestures in English Gang's lessons. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I will see you hopefully in the next presentation. Thank you. Have fun teaching. Goodbye.
English Gang!